also the members of the public who were able to join, they received a link for registration via our Federal Register notice. So thank you for joining today. I want to also note that committee member attendance has been reviewed, and we do have a quorum, so it was okay for us to proceed with the meeting. The FAC, or the GSA Acquisition Policy Federal Advisory Committee, is a discretionary GSA advisory committee. We are governed by the requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA. And this is a law that was established almost 50 years ago. So it's a long-standing American tradition for us to be seeking objective and expert advice from all sectors of our society to take on the most complex federal challenges. And doing this in a process that is both transparent and effective. Now, for the members of the public that are joining us this afternoon, we are delighted that you're here with us. We are going to provide ways for you to connect with the committee's work. For today, you will be able to view this meeting, and you also are able to submit comments to us via our inbox, which is gapfac@gsa.gov or gapfac@gsa.gov. And please be sure to include today's date in your subject line so that we'll know it was a comment related to this meeting. So I would like to, without further ado, introduce our GSA Administrator, Robin Carnahan, who's going to get us started. Robin, it's my pleasure to introduce you. Welcome to the meeting. Please proceed.
Well, thanks so much, Boris, for the invitation, and Stephanie for all you're doing to help launch this group, and for agreeing to serve as the designated federal officers. You know, I want to just also welcome everybody who is joining, especially our inaugural committee members, as well as the public who've joined us today. Special thanks are due to Troy Cribb and Cassius Butts, who were the co-chairs of the committee. I just want to thank you in advance for leading the group and for offering your time and talent to serve your country in this way. As Boris said, in just a couple of days, we're going to be commemorating an important anniversary. That's 50 years ago that Congress passed the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And interestingly, the purpose that they passed it for remains just the same today, and it's to ensure that the executive branch can benefit from a wide range of input and opinions from the public when they make policy. And it's also to ensure that the public has transparency and access to the information about how policy is made. So interestingly, GSA has been tasked with helping set up more than 1,000 of these committees over the years. And so it's our job to contribute, to make sure that members can contribute their expertise and that the public is able to listen and engage along the way. And to me, you know, it's just a great example of civic participation. That's what this American experiment in self-government is all about, is finding lots of ways for people to engage and serve their country. I can't think of a better way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of FACA than launching this new committee that's going to help guide acquisition policy of the world's biggest buyer, the United States government. Now, I know all of you already know that GSA plays a leading role through the Federal Acquisition Service. And that's why we wanted to bring together top experts from around the country, folks with practical on-the-ground experience to help generate ideas for how we can do two things. We want to first be able to streamline the way government buys things. And second, we want to leverage the government's buying power to advance important policy goals. Now, I know that, and all of us know that agencies across the government are looking for how they can most effectively implement the bipartisan infrastructure law that passed last year, and also the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act. That Inflation Reduction Act, we know, is really focused on sustainability and tackling climate change as top priorities for the administration. I've been experiencing this firsthand. Just last week, I was out in Toledo, Ohio, with Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, as well as White House Climate Advisor Ali Zaidi. We visited this hot brick-headed iron manufacturing facility in a place that used to be a brownfield that had gotten $1 billion of investment to put up this new facility. And it was just a remarkable example of how the major items in the supply chain, if you think about it, like steel, coal, asphalt, concrete, of building materials, things that GSA buys a lot of, these have traditionally been really heavy emitters of greenhouse gases, but it turns out they can actually be produced much cleaner and have a huge impact on reducing emissions. So it was fun and interesting to see that. But at GSA, we've done a lot of work in this area, this embodied carbon, how do you reduce that in the supply chain area for a while. In fact, last spring, we were working really closely together with industry to develop sustainability standards for buying concrete and asphalt. The good news is we've already awarded at least a half a dozen contracts based on those standards, mainly to small businesses on projects all across the country. Another example of how we're focused on this is just a couple of days ago, we issued an RFI for US-made solar panels and components that go with that so that we could better understand how we can source those important products right here in the United States, use those to decarbonize our grid and secure a clean domestic energy supply going forward. So the Biden administration is committed to having the US government lead by example when it comes to buying clean. So I'm going to be looking for you all to figure out how to accelerate that, how to simplify that process. For example, like what are the regulations and policies and practices that we need to update or change? And what kind of staffing or training gaps exist now that we can fill? How can we empower our federal acquisition workforce to play a leading role in reaching these buy clean goals? How can we better partner with state and local governments or industry or academia? Those are all questions that I hope that you all can help answer, and I hope you'll raise others, because getting this right has a huge payoff. I think of it as a triple win. We're creating good paying American jobs and supporting innovative companies. We're ensuring a healthier planet for the next generation, and we're saving tax dollars by lowering energy costs. The best news to me is that we couldn't be doing this at a better time. We've got momentum and money at the same time to do this work, and y'all know that doesn't always happen. In fact, not only do we have the president's executive orders, we've also got the biggest investment ever in rebuilding our nation's infrastructure and combating climate change. For that, we got nearly $370 billion to invest in that important goal. So I think of this as a really unprecedented moment for GSA and this committee to figure out how to influence how those dollars are spent across the government. We're going to be looking to you for wisdom, good judgment, and game-changing ideas so that we can get this right. So I just want to say thanks in advance for everybody raising your hand to share your time and your talent, stepping up to serve your country at this important moment. I am really eager to hear what recommendations you come up with in the months ahead, and look forward to figuring out ways to support you every step of the way. So with that, I know you have important business to do. So let me hand it over to Boris and Crystal to just dive in and get started.
Thank you so much, Robin. Really appreciate your remarks. And without further ado, I would love to welcome Crystal Gunther, who's our Associate Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy. Crystal?
Thank you, Boris. At GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy, we provide forward-thinking policy, guidance, and best practices in federal property, technology, and mission support operations, such as acquisition. We support the agency's strategic priority of a government that capitalizes on interagency collaboration and shared services to make informed management decisions and improve operations, delivering value for the American people. This advisory committee will help us to continue to deliver on our mission, which is to provide innovative solutions for a future of government. And I'm looking forward to receiving the committee's advice to address the climate crisis and increase sustainability, and to solve on other emerging federal acquisition challenges. Recent GSA climate and sustainability initiatives with an acquisition component include targeting zero-emission federal buildings by 2045, having already reduced emissions 50% from the baseline. Zero-emission federal fleet by 2035. Developing standards to reduce embodied carbon in building design and construction. Working towards a standard to promote clean solar energy. issuing an advance notice of proposed rulemaking on the role of single-use plastics, establishing government-wide contracts for EV charging stations to help develop the infrastructure. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, GSA received $3.4 billion to modernize 26 land ports of entry. Likewise, in the Inflation Reduction Act, GSA received $250 million to convert our facilities to high-performing green buildings, $2.15 billion to use low-carbon materials in construction or alteration of those buildings, and $975 million for emerging and sustainable technologies for the Federal Buildings Fund. We're grateful that these highly experienced and knowledgeable experts have all agreed to volunteer their time and their talents to help us in this endeavor. We're looking forward to their recommendations for acquisition policy that advance GSA's mission as America's buyer, an acquisition workforce that is ready for the future, and a domestic supplier base incentivized to supply innovative offerings to the federal government. Thank you again for sacrificing your time with us throughout this process. We look forward to the recommendations. So back over to you, Boris.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And with a very honoring and solid introduction here to our work, this really is a historic moment. And it is my great pleasure now to introduce to you our chair and co-chair for the GAPFAC, Troy Cribb and Cassius Butts. Troy and Cribb, I turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Boris. And thank you, Administrator Carnahan, Associate Administrator Brumfield, for your kind words and your inspiring words. More importantly, thank you for all the forward-looking work that you are doing to make sure that the over $1 trillion in taxpayer money that we spend every year on acquisitions is done in the smartest way possible for our nation. And thank you also so much for entrusting this advisory committee with the important obligation of making significant progress for a sustainable future. I am thrilled to be part of this group that GSA has pulled together from all over the country. And I want to reiterate that all over the country of thought leaders and experts from industry, academics, government, the nonprofit sector. And I'm so excited that we're going to be coming together to really help our government make acquisitions in a way that addresses the urgent climate issues that we face and help embed sustainability considerations into the government's purchasing decisions. I'm here serving in my personal capacity, but we'll give you a bit of background about myself. I currently am Director of Policy at the Partnership for Public Service, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to better government and stronger democracy. I came to the partnership after a long career, mostly in government, a little bit of law practice sprinkled in, but served twice in senior positions in the executive branch, twice in senior roles with Senate staff, including a very long stretch on the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, where I oversaw acquisition policy and came to know a lot of you on the call today. I just really look forward to working with each and every member of this committee as we develop recommendations for driving regulatory and policy and process changes that, again, can address climate and sustainability considerations and acquisition. And before I turn to my distinguished co-chair, I just want to give a huge shout out to the GSA team that has brought us to where we are today. Again, to Administrator Carnahan and Associate Administrator Brumfield, but especially also to Boris Aradia, Stephanie Hardison, Jeff Kosas, who we'll hear from shortly as well, who really have done the hard work of just laying the groundwork to stand this committee up. So thank you so much for everything that you've done, and I think I speak for all of us in saying, like, we're so excited to be working with you. Also, I just want to thank Mackenzie Robertson for her support for this FACA, and in general for all of the support that GSA provides to the FACA community across the government. It's one of the very important roles that GSA plays. And as Administrator Carnahan said, it's such an important part of how we enable civic participation and enable outside voices to give advice as to how the government can best do its business. So with that, I want to say I also am just really pleased that I'm going to be serving alongside Cassius Butts, who's co-chairperson of this committee. And Cassius, this committee is going to benefit tremendously from all your experience and perspective, both in the government and in the private sector. And with that, I will turn it over to you for some opening remarks.
All right. Thank you very much, Troy. Really appreciate that. I too also would like to thank Administrator Carnahan as well as Associate Administrator Crystal Brumfield for your leadership and really starting something that is historic. Whatever there's an opportunity to make favorable change as this committee is doing, I'm just grateful to be a part of, and I know all the other committee members and our colleagues are glad to be here as well too. What we really have done is really assemble, I like to say, almost a group of Avengers. Our work will include recommending steps to the GSA that can support workforce and industry partners and basically ensure that climate sustainability issues are fully considered in the acquisition process. And GSA, as you know, is committed to addressing climate change and the impact of our nation. And it's also committed to establishing a foundation that will assist partners in considering the materials and resources used in their products and services and how resources are basically used. This committee's work will effectively build on GSA's progress in the areas of sustainability. It really is just that simple. This goes without saying that GSA recognizes that our behaviors today, it will impact tomorrow. And that's the part that I think that a lot of people are really excited about. And just briefly about myself, I serve as Chief Strategy Officer and Managing Partner for Global Leader Group. I was fortunate to serve in the previous administration as regional administrator, and prior to that with at HUD. And this is the best part about it. We're able to bring our collective experiences together to make something great and something historic. So again, once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the GSA team, Jeff, Boris, Stephanie. We really appreciate you and the entire supportive staff. So looking forward to getting started.
Well, Cassius, I'm so glad to know we're Avengers. My kids are gonna love this. On the way to school this morning, I tried to describe like what this was all about, and I don't think it was quite clicking with them, but now they're gonna get it. So thank you. And so I think now we'll, Boris, I think we'll just move into the agenda. The agenda has been distributed in your committee packet today. And we're going to do introductions of members, share some overview information. We're going to talk about the importance and the roles of the subcommittees. Then we'll formally agree to the establishment of the subcommittees. And then we'll move into a discussion of some of the key issues that the subcommittees may take on. And then we'll, of course, close and talk about next steps. So. But first, we would like to start out with just an introduction of everyone. Again, I'm so thrilled to be serving alongside all of you. And we wanted just to do a quick introduction of each of you with your name and position, and hopefully a minute or less per person, because we do have a large group. So I'm going to kind of do the roll call here, I think, and I am meeting some of you for the first time, so I will apologize up front if I don't get your name right quite the first time, but hopefully I'll get it right the second time. So again, we'll go by last name alphabetically, so I'll start with Farad Ali.
Hey, good day, everyone. I'm Farad Ali. president of the SOCIAR, headquartered in Plano, Texas, with offices in New York, New Jersey, and as also region, as well as in the Research Triangle Park region. Happy and pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Farhad. And Denise Bailey.
Greetings, Denise Bailey, principal of Milligan and Company in Philadelphia. We're a small minority-owned firm that specializes in transportation, diversity, and economic development. I'm really pleased to be here with all the other committee members.
Thank you. And I hope I get this right. Is it Chavera Gail Bassett?
Gail Bassett is fine. Good
Gail
afternoon,
Bassett,
everyone.
okay.
I'm Zega Director for Economic Development and Strategic Engagement at Bowie State University, which is Maryland's first historical Black college and university. We have over 6,000 students, and we focus on science, technology, and research, entrepreneurship, training, and cybersecurity, and teacher education. Thank you.
Great to have you here, Gail. Thank you. Luke Assis.
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Director of Procurement at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It is really an honor to serve with such a distinguished group of committee members and a privilege to serve in pursuit of such an important mission. The Port Authority has been at the forefront of cutting-edge procurements and innovative procurements for years. And I'm just happy to bring my experience at the Port Authority to this committee in the hopes of engaging with this group going forward to make meaningful and actionable recommendations. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Luke, and we're glad to have your experience on the committee. I know I'll get this next name right because we work together in the Senate. My old friend, Rich Butel. Hi, Rich.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Rich Butel. I'm the founding principal of Cirrus Analytics, an acquisition policy firm specializing in accelerating IT modernization to bring a modern 21st century digital government to better serve the American people. I've spent 10 years on Capitol Hill, first in the Senate, working with Chairwoman Troy Cribb on codifying the Section 800 panel recommendations to reform GWACs, and then over on the House side, where I was the legislative author and legislative manager for a bill called the Federal IT Acquisition Reform Act, otherwise known as FATARA.
Thanks, Rich. Leslie Cordes.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Troy said, my name is Leslie Cordes. I'm Vice President of Programs at Ceres. We're a Boston-based NGO that works with leaders in capital markets, government, the private sector, and civil society to solve the world's biggest sustainability problems. I've worked in the domestic and international energy efficiency space for over 30 years, first on the Senate Energy Committee, where I cut my teeth on some of the early FEMP legislation, and then later in roles at USAID, EPA, and the Alliance to Save Energy. Very glad to be here with such a distinguished group, and pleasure to meet everybody.
Thank you, Leslie. Daryl Daniels.
Hi, Daryl Daniels, President and CEO of Jacobson Daniels Associates. We're based in Michigan, but with offices around the country. And we specialize in providing services to airports, airlines, and rental cars. And we work at all the major airports in the country, and we are consultants to the FAA.
Thank you so much. Nicole Darnell.
Yeah, Nicole Darnell. I'm a foundation professor at Arizona State University School of Sustainability. I'm also a director and co-founder of ASU's Sustainable Purchasing Research Initiative. In a former life, I was Associate Dean of ASU School of Sustainability and the College of Global Futures. And I'm really delighted to be here serving with you all.
Thanks, Nicole. Antonio Das.
Good afternoon, everyone. I serve as the U.S. Small Business Administration as a career employee, currently in the role of the Deputy Associate Administrator for our Office of Government Contracting and Business Development, and very much looking forward to our work with the committee.
Welcome. Mark Hayden.
Yes, I apologize for the noise in the background. I'm on a plane right now. I'm currently General Counsel for the state of New Mexico and served prior 8 years as Director of State Purchasing and attended COP26 last year. I've been involved with sustainability all my life, and this is an honor to be on this on this group.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I feel honored to serve alongside of you as well. It's just amazing to hear everyone's background here. Susan Lorenz Fisher.
Hi, everyone. Susan Lorenz Fisher. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability at AmerisourceBergen. We're a large healthcare and pharmaceutical distribution services company. I am really excited to serve on this committee alongside so many leading experts. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks. And Mamie Mallory. Mamie, you're on mute.
Great. Again, Mamie Mallory, President and CEO of Mallory and Associates LLC, a woman-owned small business with our areas of focus are civil rights, diversity, equity, and inclusion, real property asset management, business development, and business process improvement. I'm formerly the Assistant Administrator for Civil Rights for the Federal Aviation Administration. There, I had the responsibility of ensuring that there was a level playing field for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses to participate in contracts at our nation's airports. As a legally blind person, I'm also a staunch supporter for persons with disabilities. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity for public service again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you in this group, Mamie. David Malone.
Hello, everyone. My name is David. I'm currently serving as the Director of Procurement for the City of St. Petersburg, Florida. I have over 30 years in procurement and supply chain, about evenly split between the public and private sector. Formerly served as the Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Chicago, as well as King County in Seattle, Washington. I also previously held roles as the Head of Procurement for Avery Dennison Corporation and U.S. Cellular Corporation. Thank you, and I'm pleased to be here.
Thanks so much, David. Daryl McKissick.
I believe Daryl was not going to be able to join this afternoon.
All right, got it. Amlan Mukherjee.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Amlan Mukherjee, professor in civil, environmental, and geospatial engineering at Michigan Tech. In the nonprofit world, I also serve on the boards of Green Roads as well as the Green Buildings Initiative. And I've also been involved with the Sustainable Pavements Program at the Federal Highway Administration. Thank you.
Great. And let me see, I think we're down to Jenny Romer.
Hi, Jenny Romer, the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Pollution Prevention at US EPA. So some of the programs that I oversee are the EPP program, Environmental Preferable Purchasing. Sorry, it's been a long day. And our Safer Choice program. And so a couple things I'm involved in right now are procurement issues with PFAS and with the Buy Clean initiative that was discussed earlier. So very happy to be part of this group. Thank you.
Anne Rung.
Good afternoon. I'm Anne Rung, Senior Vice President for Public Sector at Veris, which is a procurement technology company. I previously served at Amazon Business, leading a team serving government customers. Most of my career has been in the public sector, serving in senior acquisition roles. I was the former administrator of Office of Federal Procurement Policy. I served as the Deputy Secretary of Procurement for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and also served as a special assistant and led the Office of Government-Wide Policy at GSA. And it is an honor to be part of this committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. And someone I think everyone who knows will kind of refer to as kind of the Dean of Procurement within DC, Steve Schooner.
So
you probably have a different title, but I refer to you as the Dean.
So, like the others, I'm ecstatic to be here. I am Steve Schooner, the Nash Sabinic Professor of Government Procurement Law at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And since I'm following Anne, I'll mention that my last government service was in the Office of Federal Procurement Policy. But again, I'm ecstatic to be part of this initiative.
Thanks, Steve. Kristen Seaver.
Hey, great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kristen Seaver, and I work within the Federal Civilian Division of GDIT, where I focus on strategic client engagement. I'm a proud retired postal worker, having served 30 years with the United States Postal Service in engineering, technology, and operations positions. I'm thrilled to be here with the group and ready to get to work.
Thank you. Stacy Smedley.
I think Stacy was not going to be able to join this afternoon.
Okay. Nigel Stevens.
Good afternoon. My name is Nigel Stevens. I'm the principal of Phoenix Strategies. My background in federal procurement goes back to my days of numerous roles in the House of Representatives, including as the staffer for the Congressional Black Caucus Minority Business Staff Task Force, on the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, and with federal IT and service providers. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to working with the team.
Thank you. Clyde Thompson.
Good afternoon. My name is Clyde Thompson. I'm the Senior Vice President at GovStrive LLC. We are a small business hub zone firm. We focus mostly to provide a full service HR and civil rights support to the federal government. I'm a retired federal employee. I worked at the USDA for 37 years in several functions throughout USDA. Two of the main ones, I was the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights for 5 years, and I was the Associate Assistant Secretary for Administration for about 3 years. And I worked in several other agencies throughout USDA, including Forest Service, Rural Development, and others. I retired from USDA in 2011, and I'm very, very honored to serve with this committee.
Thank you, Clyde. Anish Talik.
Hello, everyone. Anish Talak. I'm a building scientist and licensed architect. I'm currently a manager at RMI, which is a research and policy nonprofit working on economy-wide decarbonization. I work in our carbon-free buildings program on our embodied carbon initiative, where I conduct technical research and policy development relating to Buy Clean, which is a policy that seeks to reduce environmental impact of construction materials through procurement. Previously, I worked in sustainability consulting for high-performance building projects, where I supported teams developing analysis and specs for procuring low-carbon materials. So providing an on-the-ground perspective there, and happy to serve with all of you.
Thanks, Anish. Keith Tillage.
Good afternoon, Keith Tillage. I am the owner of Tillage Construction, full service commercial construction company and management as well. We're headquartered in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm looking forward to working with each one of you, and more importantly, to your friendship. Thanks.
Thank you. And I look forward to developing the new friendships too. David Wagger.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning to those west. Again, my name is David Wagger. I'm Chief Scientist and Director of Environmental Management at the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries in Washington, D.C., known as ISRI. ISRI is the voice of the recycling industry. Our members handle and recycle a variety of materials, including metals, paper, plastics, electronics, glass, rubber, and textiles. My own portfolio as Chief Scientist is recycling, science and technology, and research and development. I also work on design for recycling, which is intended to make products more recyclable or reusable or remanufacturable at end of use or end of life. And as Director of Environmental Management, I cover regulatory aspects of the recycling industry through all media, Clean Air Act, Clean Water, Resource Conservation Recovery, TSCA, Toxic Substances, and CERCLA Superfund. So thank you. I'm very excited to be here working with everyone. And I want to thank the GSA Administrator Carnahan for my appointment.
Thanks, David. And Kimberly Wise-White.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Wise-White, and I'm the Vice President of Regulatory and Scientific Affairs for the American Chemistry Council, which is a national trade association that represents the leading members in the business of chemistry. And so I'm really excited to participate on this esteemed committee and the work that we'll be doing over the next few years. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you all, and congratulations, GSA, for assembling just an amazing diversity of committee members in so many different ways, as far as like scope of what their areas that they work in and their backgrounds. And I'm just, again, I am so excited to get to work with this group. But before we kind of move on, Boris, do you think I missed anybody?
You got everybody. We just had a
Think
couple
so?
of members. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we just had a couple of members that were able to sit in this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. I think, and thank you all for your willingness to serve. I think my next duty is just to give everybody a brief overview of our committee charter. Yeah, you of course have received the committee charter, and you can find it on the GAPFAC website at gsa.gov. I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights here for you. First of all, related to our objective as America's buyer and the federal government's landlord, GSA is uniquely positioned to enable a modern, accessible, and streamlined acquisition ecosystem and a robust marketplace connecting buyers to the suppliers and businesses that meet their mission needs. The GAPFAC will assist GSA in this endeavor through expert advice on a broad range of innovative solutions to acquisition, policy, workforce, and industry partnership challenges. With respect to our duties, the GAPFAC will serve as an advisory body to GSA on how it can use its acquisition tools and authorities to target the highest priority federal acquisition challenges. The initial focus for the GAPFAC will be on driving regulatory, policy, and process changes required to embed climate and sustainability considerations in federal acquisition and enabling the acquisition workforce to effectively use sustainability as a critical element in the evaluation and source selection process. The GAPFAC will advise GSA on emerging acquisition issues, challenges, and opportunities to support its role as America's buyer. So again, that's kind of the high level recap. Again, you've each received a full copy of our charter and can also find it on the gsa.gov website. So Boris, I think if we're still on track, I think then we would next just move into an overview discussion of our subcommittee, our proposed subcommittee structure.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and then so we'll do a brief overview here before we head into the break, and then we'll come back after the break and dive down a little deeper into the proposed subcommittee structure and potential issues they can take on. I am very pleased to be joined in this part of the discussion by Jeff Kosas, who, as you know, is the Senior Procurement Executive at GSA and also the chair of the Ability One Commission. He's one of the brightest minds in acquisition policy for the federal government. And it was my pleasure to first get to know him when I worked on the Hill, and he helped brief me and helped understand a lot of the complex acquisition issues. And then I got to work alongside him at GSA and was just like really blown away by all of Jeff's talents and what he's done for our government. If you know Jeff, you know that his priorities are strengthening the acquisition workforce, smart and effective buying, and healthy and productive relationships between the government and industry. Jeff, thanks for everything you've done over the years to improve the acquisition processes and equip the acquisition workforce with the skills they need to do their jobs. I look forward to this discussion with you on the subcommittee structure. I think what some of the main points that Cassius and I would like to impart for the afternoon discussion is, like, we do feel like the important work of this committee, where we really roll up our sleeves and do the hard work, is going to happen at the subcommittee level. And our three proposed subcommittees will cover policy, the acquisition workforce, and our industry partners. And we want each subcommittee to have its own cadence, but as I think we would say kind of as our opening bid, we would hope that each subcommittee would be meeting at least for 1 hour every 2 weeks. And we also really want to stress the importance of public engagement with this committee as a whole, and particularly with the subcommittees, to better understand the issues at hand. Obviously, we can't do this alone, and there's a lot of great information out there, even beyond all of the excellent talent that's on this committee. So we want to tap into that. So we would recommend that at each subcommittee meeting that the subcommittees spend at least half an hour in engaging with the public or with federal agencies to help better understand the issues. We plan on having full committee meetings at least 4 times a year. And at each of those meetings, we expect about 45 minutes to an hour per subcommittee to be reporting out on their work. And then as appropriate, voting on recommendations. So for those full committee meetings, we'll expect at least like 3 to 4 hours per committee meeting. And I think as several of us have already referenced, we really want the recommendations of this committee to be actionable and specific. I think a lot of times you'll see reports in this town come out that contain like very lofty, vague goals, but what we really want to do here, whether it's short-term or long-term, or lay out some specific steps that GSA can take. So we kind of use that as a starting principle. We also want the subcommittees to be read into each other's work so that you can leverage what each other of you are doing, and making sure that as things roll up to the full committee that there's full awareness of what the issues are, and especially if there are going to be areas of disagreement, we want to know that ahead of time so that as we prepare for the full committee meetings, we can manage our time and schedules for the full committee meetings and make sure we work through those issues. So again, our hope is that over the course of the next year that each subcommittee can really hone in and polish on 2 or 3 very specific recommendations. And again, we're hoping that some of those can be short-term wins to help move the government along here, and certainly also expect that some of them there will be longer term, but again, trying to lay out as specific a path as we can get to the ultimate result. So with that, I will just turn it over to Jeff for whatever he wants to add here, and then I think we go into break, and then we'll come back for more discussion on this.
All right. First, thank you for that amazingly kind introduction. As Troy said, I'm Jeff Kosis, GSA's Senior Procurement Executive, and also the chair of the U.S. Ability One Commission. The latter is a very small federal agency which uses the power of federal acquisition to employ roughly 40,000 people who are blind or who have significant disabilities. They do that through federal contracts. I mentioned the latter role because I think it's a really good example of the ways in which we use the power of federal acquisition to support public policy objectives. In this case, public policy objectives that come out of statute. Today, we're formally kicking off GSA's first Acquisition Federal Advisory Committee in nearly 15 years. And even though I had read all of our members' bios, boy, was I knocked out when I just heard them summarize who they were, their background, where they came from. Of our commissioners, only 2 are currently federal employees. Fully half currently are outside of the DC area. We thought it important that we have a broad spectrum, lots of different voices and viewpoints. And I think you really heard that in our membership. We have people who work in city government, state government, people who have been in federal government. You heard businesses small and large. You heard the nonprofit sector. You heard the academic sector. You heard the capital sector. Lots of different perspectives that we hope will make this meaningful and helpful. We'll be posting the list of commissioners before the end of the day. And once cleared, we'll also post abbreviated bios so you can actually learn more of their incredibly impressive backgrounds. Troy mentioned subcommittees. We'll be forming 3 distinct subcommittees, and our expectation is by far the majority of the work will happen in the subcommittees. And yes, those meetings will be public as well. As Troy told you, quarterly, the subcommittees are going to come back and meet in a full committee session where they'll share their accomplishments, they'll share recommendations, and tee up issues for the full committee to vote. We are talking, as I said, 3 subcommittees. The first is what we're calling the Policy and Practice Subcommittee. The goal behind this subcommittee is to implement policies or procedures around the practice of acquisition. How do we actually do the job on a day-to-day basis? The second subcommittee is our Industry Partnership Subcommittee. Our goal here is to find the right way to educate and to incentivize our industry partners in providing clean and sustainable products and services to GSA and to our customers. And our third subcommittee will focus on the acquisition workforce. Our goal here is making sure that we equip the acquisition workforce for success. And here I'm using the very broad definition of acquisition workforce. So we're not just talking contracting officers and contract specialists. We're talking program managers, project managers, contracting officer representatives, and all the other support personnel who are part of making an acquisition successful. We're going to move into a deeper discussion, and I'd like to lead off each of those by reminding you of the goal of the subcommittee and setting out what are some of the challenges and the constraints that we should be working in. We actually seem to be a few minutes ahead of schedule at the moment. So I'm going to call a slight audible, and let's actually introduce the first of our subcommittees, the Policy and Practice one. Let's have that discussion, and then we'll hold our break at the end of that conversation. So again, the Policy and Practice is about making sure that we are implementing policies and processes around the practice of acquisition. For this subcommittee, we're very open to legislative or regulatory proposals, but recognize those may be very long-term actions. We're particularly interested in hearing, what can we do now? What can we do through policy? What can we do through pilots and tests and proofs of concept? We're open to waiving those regulations and policies where we have statutory authority to do so. There's some definite challenges and constraints to bear in mind here. We've seen a decline in the industrial base interested in doing business with the federal government. We have administration that is committed to increasing spend with small disadvantaged businesses. They've asked us to increase that spend by 50% over this 5-year window. And so as you heard our member introductions, you heard folks with a strong background in small business and equity type issues. We also have an aggressive administration acquisition agenda around a healthy labor movement, around items that are manufactured or produced in the US, around cybersecurity, around equity, as well as around climate. So we want to be sure that our Policy Practice Subcommittee is aware of keeping those things in mind. As we move forward, there's a range of tools that we'll be able to deploy. Let me highlight a couple for you. GSA has 2 acquisition innovation advocates internally. These are folks who can help champion implementation if we're going to go down a test and proof of concept route. GSA is a voting member of the FAR Council, so certainly that gives us opportunity to advance some of the key issues that may come out of this body. We can issue a variety of policy documents to reinforce ideas, to authorize action, to provide some policy cover, and we own a number of key acquisition resources and websites. Some are internal and some are government-wide. So that gives us a lot of room to share information and to propose awareness. Cassius, can I ask you to help share some of the ideas and thoughts that our members had submitted as things to think about as we form this subcommittee?
Certainly, and here we go, I am all. Certainly, and thank you, Jeff. Some of the opportunities that you will have a chance to talk about really comes back from your own experience. Several of those initiatives may fall into the areas around government as a practitioner if you work for a federal agency, but some of those opportunities may come in your personal experience if you have been able to lead and give detailed feedback that can support local, state, and federal government, such as some of the areas I know that Clyde has done in his previous roles. Thank you for that, Jeff. And so when we talk about really defining what we're looking to accomplish, we want to define a universal manner to determine the appropriate key performance and indicators and the means to measure to form a basis of fair and transparency. We're going to review assess the operations and effectiveness of current EP qualifications and process to ensure the acquisition of green IT products, which was actually a great idea. Another one was ensuring the policy and conceived through the process of an inclusive of values of small businesses that can contribute to green economy and diversification of federal suppliers. And something we've been looking forward to that for some time. We also had an idea to address the ways to integrate and to coordinate related procurement policy that is evolving in the agencies around EPA, FHWA, per Inflation Reduction Act of 2020, and Buy Clean Initiative Act on 915. We also had one to develop a scalable acquisition policy framework for specific classes of materials and services, starting with significant and driving material, and then extending to a comprehensive coverage. These were some of the initial ideals that have been submitted. We actually believe that there's an opportunity for you all to add value, not just during the times where we're supposed to meet, but also in those in-between times. And so if you have the opportunity to write those opportunities down, some of you all who will be serving in those leadership roles in the respective coach in the chair positions will be instrumental in making certain that we can have some short-term victories, which we believe is very attainable at this time. Jeff?
So we had invited our members to send some input ahead of the meeting. I think we have another slide or two of some of the ideas, but after we have presented those, what we'd like to do is invite any of our members to either elaborate on what they've submitted or to offer some new thoughts. We're not after a decision today. The subcommittees will actually narrow down topics in meetings to come. But today, we just want to hear some initial thoughts and reactions. What are some areas where the policy team may seek to go? So let me invite any of our members who would care to comment on the policy to use the raise hand feature and jump in, and let's start a conversation.
Well, I can certainly jump in.
Okay, I see some hands raised. Let's see. I am going to start with Amlin. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Again, it's a great honor to serve on this committee, of course. I just wanted to highlight how there are different agencies working on different aspects of sustainability and of course, focusing on embodied carbon. And so bringing that integration and being aware of industry readiness and creating resources to help industry come along as we create policy around acquisition for embodied carbon would be very important. It'll help the policy be successful when industry is also ready to be able to respond to it. Thank you.
Okay, Richard? Yeah, Richard, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you there. Rich Butel here. A key tool to be used to drive sustainability and other social metrics is to require that the vendor base adhere to specific standards and practices as a procurement requirement, either through self-attestation requirements or other forms of certification. One very prominent characteristic in the sustainability space is the EPEAT program, which is a program run from a not-for-profit out on the West Coast that requires that IT vendors adhere to specific practices and requirements in the preparation and design of IT goods and services. You have to obtain this credential as a solicitation requirement in order to be qualified to bid on specific jobs. And so this program it's like Energy Star. It's been around for a while, and there is at least an issue with respect to looking at it to ensure it is not inadvertently keeping small businesses from participating in the government and federal marketplace because of the costs associated with adhering to the program, or alternatively, to expand the structure of this program to encompass such things as data centers, green data centers, which are energy hogs, frankly. You've seen legislation such as FATAR, which address energy consumption by government and private data centers and the like. And the point being, as government consumes technology, to ensure that the technology being consumed adheres to basic principles of sustainability and environmental stewardship. Over.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And just to note, we are capturing your comments via notes, so we'll definitely capture those back. I'm going next to Nigel and then David.
Thank you. It was rather disturbing to hear about the decline in industrial base interested in doing business with the federal government. When we tried to address this previously, we had to go through identifying opportunities for entities that already existed, such as the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or trying to leverage the programs like the SBIR, STTR programs that already exist, that if we're able to leverage additional, just expand their capabilities and their scope and give them additional resources, because there's a lot of this research and technology and innovation that's sitting on the shelves at universities that SBIR, STTR can help commercialize and then get it in the hands of those small manufacturers and machinists that are a part of the MEP program that is in the 50 states. So that may be a way that this council can help make those connections and leverage existing programs instead of trying to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. So I'm gonna go David, Kimberly, and Steve. So we'll start with David.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to comment on sort of the interagency consistency that comes out of my own experience seeing regulations under different acts, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Resource Conservation, Recovery, and they more or less contradict each other. They're not consistent. So I'm real sensitive to trying to get the various agencies that have let's say a regulatory or some kind of policy role in sustainability to really be on the same page and reach the same goals. It's kind of like thinking of an LCA where you might have 5 different metrics, and if everyone chooses a different metric to focus on, you kind of end up with different answers. So just trying to have that all sort of be consistent, I think would be quite important. The other thing is that as much as we have money and momentum, I really like that phrase. This is kind of a time-dependent problem. So hopefully we will triage, so to speak, where we can make the biggest impacts sooner rather than later, because the sooner that we do the big impacts, that is big reductions, the more benefits we get, over the period of time that we're trying to achieve our goals. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about.
Thank you. Kimberly.
Just 2 things I wanted to flag that came up. One of the things that I think we should make sure that we're considering as we're developing our policy is looking at whole life cycle impacts. So to make sure that we're really incorporating that into what we're doing. And then something that Richard mentioned earlier about kind of the partners that GSA is working with, really making sure that we build out a toolkit for those partners on what the procurement policies look like and how they can effectively implement them. So it helps them help the GSA as they're purchasing.
Really quick, Kimberly, you had a comment previously, but you had to echo. Did you want to take the opportunity to mention that now?
Sorry, did you get the first comment?
No, I mean from earlier today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I was able to add the earlier comment, I think.
Okay.
Today.
Good enough.
Okay, great. So we're gonna go Steve, Antonio, and Ann. So Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'm willing to give up my spot to Nicole Darnall, who's next in line.
Okay, Nicole. Okay, I missed you, Nicole. Go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. I just want to put an idea out there. We know that for very good reasons, we keep industry an arm's length distance between contractors and the private sector and government as we think about procurement contracts. But one of the things that we're discovering across local governments is that those who think creatively about how they engage their vendors tend to be more successful in the outcomes they bring related to sustainability. So I'm hoping that a part of this committee will be also thinking creatively about how to engage vendors and the private sector to think about the ways we can engage so that we can truly be successful within this space.
Nicole, to jump in on that comment, that's what we're hoping some of the work will come out of the industry subcommittee.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I definitely want to flag that on the parking lot. So ahead, Steve, if you still want to comment, Steve, Antonio, and Ann.
Sure. So I want to go back to where Jeffrey started us in terms of our guidance and the clear request for specific recommendations. And one thing that I've heard in the last couple of years from contracting officers, or what we might call 1102s, is they ask the question, what do you want me to do? How do I do it? And so I really think we need to focus not only on a strong leadership message from the top, but we need to give specific examples. We need to give lessons learned. We have to use models. And there are plentiful models out there around the world and at the state and local level, but we need to turn that into actionable examples for our massive and diverse procurement workforce that's buying everything from buildings to large weapon systems to commercial off the shelf.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So Antonio and Ann. Antonio.
All right, thank you. I really wanted to amplify a little bit on what I believe it was Rich that spoke to earlier around the small business critical part component of this. You know, just stepping back, the world's largest purchaser is going to be aggressively moving towards a sustainability, green economy approach. We have to make sure that whatever we're doing in our work here is done in a manner that brings, in a good way, small businesses along for this whole journey, because the industrial base, as Jeff has pointed to, is on the decline and has been on the decline. There's a lot of work that the federal government has been doing, and you know, Jeff and others have really had a lot of great success in helping to position some policies to turn that around. But we still have a long way to go, and we want to make sure that whatever we're doing enables small businesses to be an active participant and to bring the innovation that small business can bring to this for a longer, more sustainable industrial base and support for the nation's economy.
All right, thank you. Ann.
The first recommendation began with a simple statement of consistency of definition of sustainability. And we've heard, I think, throughout the comments thus far, this theme of consistency. And I just want to underscore that is such an important component, consistency of definition and standards, because one, we do have such a decentralized, diverse workforce, but also if we're going to create a framework and draft KPIs and measure our progress, we have to have that consistency in definition and practices. So I thought that was an incredibly important point that someone had included in the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to do Kimberly and Leslie.
As we also think about policy, I think we heard earlier from the assistant administrator about the significant amount of resources that are available in the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And so it would be helpful to also hear from GSA if they have specific priorities based on where funding is allotted, so that we can make sure as we're building out our recommendations, we're focusing on the highest priorities that they've identified as well.
Okay, thank you. Leslie.
Actually,
go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jeff.
Kimberly, one of the things that we think will be particularly important in the subcommittee structure is you're reaching out to GSA or other agencies, inviting them in to talk about questions of exactly that sort. So that's exactly the type of thing that we hope that the subcommittees will think about, will ask about, and will invite people in to have some of those conversations. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you. Leslie.
Thank you, Boris. Just to get to some of the consistency points that have been made by others, one suggestion we might have is to require major suppliers to demonstrate a specific commitment to Paris climate targets. That's something that's actionable, including disclosing their own net greenhouse gas emission and science-based plan for reducing those emissions to net zero by 2050. And by doing that, they can spur sector kind of peer competition and drive down emissions within their sector.
Thank you. What I want to do right now is we are going to put up to, so it looks like, Ann, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Ann. And then I was going to ask for, oh, it was just still there. Okay, I got you.
Sorry, forgot to lower.
Got you. I want to put up a poll here because there's been really good conversation here. I want to capture, we're capturing the chat, by the way, but any additional ideas, Adam is going to launch a poll here, and it's actually open up in your chat. And so what you can do here is you can add a couple other ideas, things that we want to capture, and just going to give you a couple of minutes. I'm just going to be silent for a little bit here, like about 3-4 minutes. Anything else you want to add is going to show up on the screen, and then we're going to go on a break after that before we continue our discussion with the other two subcommittees after the break. So let's give it a couple minutes. So you have a link in your chat. You go into that link, you'll be able to enter couple other quick ideas, thoughts that you have that you want to capture for this part of the conversation. And while that's happening, also, Jeff, feel free to add anything else that you want to add during this.
This, this conversation, as we've walked through the first topic, is exactly what we're hoping for today. Let's appoint some of the potential issues that our subcommittees can think about, can wrestle with. Following this meeting, as we formally populate the subcommittees, we'll get our initial public meetings announced and scheduled, and then the subcommittees will follow up on this conversation on their own ideas, and will come back and tell us which are the big challenges that they're looking to run with. Really, any of those 2 or 3 or 4 well-honed priorities. Boris, back to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So you all been very patient with just a little overtime. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to leave this open here. Feel free to add anything else. But we're going to take a break till 2:20 Eastern time. So it's about 12 minutes. We'll be back at 2:20. So thank you again. Again, we'll keep this open here for a bit and we'll capture some more ideas. And this is an open conversation. You can definitely continue to share your ideas. But this is a really great conversation here. And then we'll bring it back with Troy, Cassius, and Jeff after the break. So see you at 2:20. Okay, looks like we are gathered together again. So I'm gonna turn this back over to Troy and Cassius to lead us for the rest of the conversations, and also Jeff. And so, yeah, so thanks everybody for coming back. So I'll send it back to you, Troy, for the next.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think we will pick right back up on where Jeff and Cassius were in walking through the subcommittees and starting to get folks' ideas on some of the issues that each subcommittee should tackle. So Jeff, maybe I'll hand it over to you to tee up the second subcommittee.
Absolutely. Nicole, I think you said it really well earlier. The second subcommittee is our one that's focused around industry partnership. I wish I had written down your words, but with the subcommittee, we're trying to ensure we find the right ways to educate and to incentivize our industry partners so that they're providing clean, sustainable products and services to GSA and to our customers. I had mentioned earlier that there's key administration priorities around growing the industrial base, around small business, including around increasing spend to small disadvantaged businesses. We're going to ask the subcommittee to consider things from the perspective of the small businesses, from this perspective of new entrants, and from the perspective of well-established federal contractors. Where there may be advocates in some of these companies, what should they think about in making the internal case for investments and for commitments? And how do we help these companies understand and explain some of the emerging requirements or expectations in this area? As with the first subcommittee, there's a range of tools that GSA has that we can deploy in moving recommendations forward. We're pretty good at leveraging technology to reach a broader audience. We can use tools such as our one called GSA Interact. It's our online communication hub with industry. We have a web-based email subscription management system where members of the public can subscribe and join in and get information on news and topics. We can certainly use sam.gov, the official site for registering to do business with the US government. And naturally, we can do topic-specific web pages. We can host online meetings. We can arrange all types of meetings, listening sessions. We can do it more formally. For instance, we've just issued an advance notice of proposed rulemaking around single-use plastics. We have issued requests for information, such as one that the administrator mentioned around clean domestic solar power. We can host reverse industry days. What we'd like to do now is have a conversation very similar to the one that we did with the last subcommittee. We'll share some of the advanced feedback that we received and then invite you, please raise your hands and give us your initial thoughts. What are some helpful things for the industry subcommittee to think about and address? Cassius, anything to add here?
No, not this time. We're actually just looking forward to us getting started and getting some very short, quick wins in.
Okay, I think we did have some advanced feedback, so maybe we can put that slide up for a moment or two.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and once people have read that, let's give them time to read it, then take it down, and everyone can think of what they may want to say.
Jeff, as we're pulling that back up, there were several folks who actually brought up some conversations just before we started the call today that we thought would be some really good ideas. And so we were talking about the different parts of the country that people were from. I think we have someone from Arizona on the call who has a totally different climate from our colleague in Seattle. Who was that from Arizona?
Yeah, that's me. Nicole Jarnell.
Okay, Nicole. Okay, so we're looking forward to that contribution that we talked about in the beginning. So here we go. So at this point in time, we can actually have some of those ideas that were discussed earlier, but I see some of the conversations, some of the ideas we don't want to read out all of them, but we do want to talk about your suggestions. And I think there was someone who talked specifically about evaluating and it would address GSA schedule into entry challenges for small businesses. And I think, Antonio, you mentioned earlier on our call today, although you're in Washington today, I believe you are in Oklahoma. Is that right?
You got it correct.
Okay. You want to talk a bit about that and that discussion earlier, as you see several ideas are coming specifically around small business in this section?
Yeah, and I think just, kind of scanning some of what's on there too, there's a lot of great points. And I think a lot of this comes back to also how do we make sure we're readying the small business community to be able to participate. Just like we want to make sure we have an informed and educated and prepared acquisition workforce, we really need the same thing with our small business community. And so this is a time of change that's coming upon us as we move in this direction. And there'll be needs for a different level of education, a different level of informing those small businesses so that they'll be able to effectively participate in this new element that we're looking at as we look to really go more and more into sustainable products and service delivery.
Excellent. Richard, did you have anything to add at this part? Of course, we will give you the affection name as a dean, but is there something that you would like to add to the segment?
No.
Okay. All right. So, Jeffrey, as you will continue to see, we're looking to have these ideas added on a continuous basis and have those recommendations given. And I think what you are really going to see is that people actually have some substance that are affecting our respective communities. And we actually see this on a daily basis. Denise, obviously going back up to Pennsylvania, we talked about that before the call. I'd love for you to add just the environment, what takes place in your area in Pennsylvania in the Northeast, and how that actually has affected the rest of the country, actually the world for that matter.
Yeah, it's interesting because both it's an area rich in small businesses, but also, it's been an industrial base. And so there are a number of firms, big and small, that are trying to make that transition into more climate friendly and profitable businesses. I think for some of them, especially in this subcommittee, thinking about what are the multiple vehicles of procurement that the federal government, in particular GSA, uses for buying these types of products, and how do you build more awareness about that? Someone who understands the GSA schedule platform, it's both, there's an entry point, you have to understand it, but once you figure it out, it's really a treasure trove of opportunity. But there are other vehicles that are out there in the federal government space. So it's almost a blend of the two. How do you encourage some of these, smaller and legacy businesses to pivot to these types of industry? Because they're often the innovator businesses too. They can pivot more readily, while at the same time they may not be steeped in federal government contracting, and so that could be the natural barrier, and that only gets even more important when you move to the small minority, women-owned, disadvantaged business environment. So that's something that I think this subcommittee could really do some thoughtful work on, is to the opportunities are there. How do you make sure if you build it, that they will come?
Certainly. In this previous road, I know that Farad Ali had a chance to lead an organization in the Southeast that actually was directly affected by those areas to these. And Farad, is there anything that you would like to add in this area to bring your expertise to the table that I think is going to add some value to this specific subcommittee?
Yeah, I really believe that, what you expect, what you inspect, and we have to look at what the government-wide performance has been throughout the government in these areas that they said they want to focus on. We know the Biden administration has put forth goals, and even people in each department to make sure that they are able to follow the utilization. And I think as we look at improving accessibility to these federal procurement contracts, that we also strengthen the suppliers so they can be prepared in advance. So if we can get a future forecast on what's going to be going on and go into these communities, particularly as some of this infrastructure dollars have been passed down to the states, we can start looking at what's that workforce or what's that business force to make sure that we have the availability and access. So as we can inspect what we expect in communities, we can ensure that the government-wide performance will have more of that utilization of all the different businesses. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Texas.
Thank you for that. Nigel, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So recently the SBA released a final rule that gave past performance not only to first tier subcontractors, but also to small businesses that were part of teaming arrangements and partnerships. Now, I would like to see this committee look into how we can leverage something like that and expand it, because a lot of these contracts, you start talking about some really environmental sustainability or brownfields or environmental remediation and renewable energy, these contracts are rather large. So how can we leverage those rules and other opportunities to allow smaller firms to team together to go after these larger opportunities? Because sometimes capacity and size is a barrier to these smaller, more innovative firms for going after these contracts. So how can we allow them to come together and go after the larger opportunities?
Very true, very true. And there's a couple other hands I want to get to. Ann, really quick. She raised her hand a little while ago. Ann?
Thank you. I was thinking through the first bullet on the challenges for small and diverse disadvantaged businesses and entering the federal marketplace. And I think it's also important upon entry to think about maybe as we develop these partnership arrangements with suppliers around climate change and sustainability, that we just be sensitive to the fact that it may be a different type of framework or partnership arrangement with small and diverse businesses. They may not have the resources or sort of the same infrastructure to support some of our partnership initiatives, and we should just be sensitive to that.
Okay, thank you. Mammy. Oh, there you go. Mamie, I apologize.
No problem.
It probably has happened to you more often.
It's all good. I guess my question is there any idea, the baseline for what small businesses or women-owned businesses that currently operate in the space? And that would be my concern. And then how do we grow more to enter in? There would be a number of disciplines that could easily, those in the engineering space, a number of things, but I was thinking about that this population this new growth would come from, but I also connect with the SBA person, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name. How do we incentivize the larger entities, especially those in the R&D and the innovation world, to partner and team with other small businesses and women-owned businesses to bring them on into the space?
And we're going to have some more in-depth conversation around that. That was Antonio Doss from FBA who gave those comments, and we will go further in detail with this particular subcommittee as well. And I think we have 3 left as well too. Dr. Mukherjee. Oh, you're on mute.
Of course, thank you. I just wanted to add the perspective of how important it is to reach out to our academic partners across universities and really emphasize the need to have sustainability be in part of the curriculum in colleges of engineering as well as business, to see how it affects what we design is what is acquired. And there was something else that was just mentioned that is very important, is what we expect is what we inspect, or what we inspect is what we expect. And it goes both ways, really. So tying sustainability into design and construction, understanding how that affects our business processes, and really integrating that into the curriculum. I think finding our academic partners to do that, to help us with that, really, to grow the workforce, is very, very important. Thank you.
Very good point. Very good point. And I think we have a couple other practitioners in the academic area that actually would be very beneficial in adding those comments to the subcommittee as well too. Last two really quick, Dr. White, and then up to Richard, please. Dr. White.
So thanks, Cassius. I just want to echo what was said by a couple of our committee members about really targeting accessibility, right? So ensuring that we really have a process and are really focused and clear about identifying those small businesses that are small innovators and helping them really partner with some of the larger organizations that may already be well established, and being intentional about that, and making sure that as we're building out our activities and our policies, that we really are thoughtful about that. And I think Mamie also raised a great point about making sure that we know who those small businesses are, right? And making sure that we have a mechanism to actually get information out to them in some way. I mean, the Federal Register notice and things like that are great, but that's not sometimes how some of those small organizations actually get information about what's happening. And so trying to find a way to get into their information sources so they're aware, and that we really help them understand where these opportunities exist and how they could build those partnerships with some of the other larger companies.
Thank you. Great point. I think Administrator Carnahan and Associate Administrator Brumfield were very specific, even in the press release, to actually have words to reflect what you just said, particularly about being sensitive around diverse opportunities. And so thank you for those comments. It will also be very important as we move forward. Just a couple more before we move on. We had Richard, and then we'll come back down to Luke and then Denise.
Thank you, Cassius. You know, in reflecting further on your question as to how we can avoid these requirements from impairing access by small and innovative businesses, it occurred to me that GSA itself has pioneered a program structure to address this problem squarely. And I'm talking specifically about an essential criteria for technology providers called FedRAMP. This is an essential credential that is necessary to obtain for a technology provider to sell IT services and goods into the federal government. And it was serving as a barrier and keeping small businesses out from participating in the federal IT market because of its expense and difficulty to obtain. So GSA pioneered a program called FedRAMP Ready, which helped to tutor and train small businesses to get them ready to apply for and receive the credential. And so GSA has come up with a workaround approach that could be at scale modeled for sustainability as well.
Absolutely, and utterly important. And we saw that in this administration's effort to make certain that we're covering and making things more technology accessible and affordable. Because what good is technology if we can't buy it, right? Definitely great points. And we definitely look forward to having those contributions in this committee as well too. Luke and Denise?
Sure. As a procurement practitioner, competition is paramount. It is in many ways how we define our success. One danger I've encountered when implementing a new standard or a preference is navigating that fine line between a barrier to entry, which leads to no competition, or an incentive that could move the market. I think talking to our industry partners and understanding where that line is really going to be the key to success for this subcommittee and where the work is going to be, most pervasive here.
Absolutely. Thank you for that as well, too, Luke. Denise.
Yeah, and I think just expounding on what Kimberly said, oftentimes the best on-ramp for a small business is an opportunity with a larger partner. One of the things I think we should explore if we really want to expound upon that as an on-ramp is, it's been my experience as a small business that when partnering with a larger business on some of these opportunities, that all the requirements of the base contract get filtered down to the sub anyway. And so things such as insurance and bonding and all the requirements that are assessed at the prime level, the primes often assign that to all the subcontractors too. And so I think it's something we need to be mindful of. I don't know if it's a policy decision or a partner decision, but that to truly provide that on-ramping, we have to think about ways that, if you're a subcontractor, that burden is less than if you're the prime contractor for a lot of the contract terms and conditions and where there could be some impact. So it's truly an on-ramp and not itself a barrier.
Okay, and just the last two with Keith and Mamie. before we go on. Denise, to your point, you're exactly right. Have an opportunity to almost reintroduce the mentor protege program will be an excellent opportunity for this committee to go a bit further. And I know there are practitioners as well as other folks on this committee that have been involved in that effort. And so thank you for that as well too. Keith and Mamie, and then we'll move on.
I was wondering why I wasn't being recognized, but I was told that my hand just blends in, you know, with the back. So listen,
it does.
It does.
Listen, one of the things that we really have to take a look at, you know, from my perspective, one of the things that's happened has been you've had multiple situations where there was an influx of huge amounts of money and it looked at as huge opportunities for small and minority business. The thing that I like to go back and look and find out is how many businesses had actually grown and actually, you know, been sustainable. And it was very few of them after this influx of money. One of the things I'd like the committee to do and to be challenged with is making sure that we are truly empowering the right businesses for the right reasons and looking for people that really want to grow. I've seen that the partnerships and I've seen these things come in when it was useful for the prime. And at the end of the day, they both went their separate ways. And the small minority company was kind of where they started. So that's what I like.
Thank you for that. And just for your own edification, as you already know, we're fraternity brothers and haven't seen each other in a number of years. I will not ignore you. But it does blend in on the back of your cabinet back there.
I was going to give you a call. All right.
Okay. Thank you for those contributions, and as well, this is going to be significant additions for recommendations as we move forward. Mamie?
Just quick, we're talking about new entrants, but we also have to be cautious based on the policies and increasing our standards, the impact of pushing some out of business. So there will be a cost implication around the activity as well. Just their own company. I'm thinking of trucking or, you know, those that provide car services, things of those like that, as they change over the fleet and stuff. So there will be some fallout. So that is something we should be concerned about as well.
So Mamie, to your point, as we consider implementing some of these ideas, consider the resources that will be needed for the transition, if you will, right? Okay, and that may not necessarily be in terms of totally in the form of finances, but it could be in the form of maybe what we previously mentioned, a mentor protege program to help to make that transition, but also to help to have a place for them to be. So I totally understand what you mean with that.
And a transition plan.
Yes.
They need to have a plan, and maybe you don't have to have it turned, all at once, but evolve over time.
So the word that I was looking for that just popped in my head was a succession plan. So a proper succession plan, similar to what is needed in some cases with the 8A program, something would be necessary to come as a recommendation from this committee. Would you say that's about in the same line?
I was also thinking in terms of the technology that impacts that particular business. Yes. And the changeover of that aspect.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to adding those recommendations with this committee. Denise, did you have your hand up? There. You're done. Okay. I'm going to turn back over to Jeff.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Tremendous discussion. Thank you all. So let's move on to our third and final subcommittee. Our goal in this subcommittee is all around equipping the acquisition workforce for success. And again, when I say acquisition workforce, I'm not just talking our contracting office and contract specialists, but the much broader definition. So think the program managers, the project managers, the contract officer representatives, and all the other support personnel who are involved. Today, our acquisition workforce faces a number of challenges. They're certainly not exempt from the Great Resignation. We see very high numbers of vacancies across government and very high levels of attrition. There's significant new contracting demands being made on the acquisition professionals through things such as the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, all on top of normal requirements and spend. There's all kinds of new responsibilities that they're contending with in areas outside of their core expertise. New requirements around cybersecurity, around labor law, around equity, as well as around climate and sustainability. I'd also ask the subcommittee to be really conscious of the world of oversight. If we're going to ask our acquisition professionals to start including bigger aspects of sustainability in their award decisions, what do we need to ensure that we're giving them in terms of tools, in terms of top cover, in terms of support, so that they can enter into this space? When we talk about the tools that we're able to deploy here, well, we're in the midst of converting to an entire new curriculum for contracting officers. The new curriculum is going to feature a smaller set of basic courses, and instead it will be based on credentials in discrete areas. Those of you who are familiar with DoD will recognize the model, as they were the first mover here. GSA operates the Federal Acquisition Institute. I mentioned earlier that they provide acquisition training for nearly 200,000 civilian acquisition professionals. And there's a wide range of GSA tools and resources focused on the acquisition workforce. So again, we had some ideas and thoughts submitted in advance. Adam, maybe you can post that. Let's give everyone a minute or two to take a look at the advanced ideas, and then would love to have a very similar conversation to the ones we did on the last two subcommittees. So just when folks have had the chance, let me turn it over to you, and let's see what ideas we have and what's on people's minds.
Certainly, thank you, Jeff. And as we heard some of those conversations just previously, we talked about the evaluation criteria, and so someone brought that up actually on multiple occasions. We talked about assessing ways in which sustainability can be embedded into really making better decisions. And I think we actually have some folks who are actually involved on this committee that can actually speak about that in a very vibrant way. And I don't want to call all of you all out, but I do know that there's a couple of individuals that we got a chance to know a little bit better while we were actually evaluating and getting to know you all a little bit better. Clyde, you had spent a number of years in a number of capacities, really on the internal side and now on the external side. And I know that you actually have some feedback that I think can add some value to this particular subcommittee. Would you like to talk about ways that you have learned and experienced while you were on the contracting side, and what differences you can see now that you're on the other side that can add some value to this committee?
Yes, Cassius, thank you for the opportunity to add to the conversation. Yes, I did submit some comments in advance, but to answer your question directly, now I spent, like I said, about 37 years on the inside of government, and now my last 10 years on the outside, and I see quite a bit of differences that affect, especially small businesses, and trying to deal with the federal government. Several of those items have been mentioned, and for example, I was going to say a couple of things in the earlier comment, but I didn't get the person's name, but they were mentioned, especially on the FedRAMP. The person who talked about that, that is very difficult for small businesses to to navigate and get into the federal government. In addition, someone mentioned partnering, small businesses partnering with the large business, and then when you finish, the large business move on, but the small company is left where they started. Somebody said that also, so I didn't want to expound on that, but that's in addition to. There's on those, somebody mentioned about the flow down clauses. I mean, she didn't mention flow down, but she was talking about the flow down clauses. A lot of clauses that affects the large business are flow down to the small businesses, but the large business get most of the credit. We can look at that. in addition, when we talk about sustainability, perhaps maybe we could look at putting some kind of, I think I mentioned this earlier, some kind of selection criteria in the contracting with the contracting officers when they have a checklist, and then you can't maybe make a sustainability a selection criteria maybe, but it could be whereas small businesses get additional credit if they meet some kind of sustainability criteria, and we can list what those criteria are. And I don't have a list right now, but I'm sure this group can do that. But I say that on this side of the house now, on the inside of the government, we expect some things from the contracting community, and then sometimes they can and cannot deliver. And I think if we we have a SOW, we have the statement of works, what have you, for the contracting officer, the contracting community to abide by. But I think in some cases, in the RFI stage, if we can talk about sustainability and some of the other criteria that can help that the small businesses in the contracting community can help the federal sector identify what they need. I think at that stage, we can, I think, make some great progress with this committee and with the sustainability factors that we're now talking about, I believe.
Okay, really quick, and thank you for that, Clyde. I want to ask Anish, actually, from where you have actually sat and where you're sitting now, not physically, but professionally, you're able to see this almost on a daily basis, the results of. Can you talk briefly about your contributions for this specific subcommittee and how actually you can add that value and come up with different creative ideas of how we can make some recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I was thinking about is cross-departmental or cross-agency even spaces where folks can share their best practices on performance contracting. That's something that we've seen at RMI working with different agencies as being a really key leverage point. So there's already really great stuff happening. It's often just lost in the large organization that is the federal government. So finding those success points and then trying to replicate them in learning sessions or toolkits for the contracting staff. And then separate from that, I mean, providing trainings on subject matter. I think there is a lack of time, certainly, but on everyone's calendar, there's a lot folks are being asked to do, but even training sessions on what emerging topics in sustainability are and sustainable procurement are will be really good. And I think those can even be pretty short and sweet and follow from those cross-departmental discussions on best practices.
Okay. And really quick, Nicole, you've actually have a plethora of experience in that area where you talk about, can you talk about those possible contributions that we could see for this particular subcommittee?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really plays off what the conversation that Anish has started regarding best practices. And I was delighted to see that we have a number of committee members that are coming from local governments because they've been innovating a lot over the last few years. And we should be tapping their shoulders and drawing on those best practices and asking to what extent they're going to be applicable for the federal workforce. And then the second area that really resonated with me that Anish said is the general sustainability training. It's a very elusive concept. We've got to bring this down and bring it down quickly so that the workforce can think about how this can be actionable, because it doesn't connect on the day-to-day level with different people, especially when you're considering a workforce that's focused on quality and price and each of these other criteria. This is one additional criteria that gets heaped on, and it's not well understood. So we have to demystify this.
A very good point. And demystifying means just trying to give government another name, because unfortunately people, they don't know what we do or how we do. They just get to have the benefits of it, right? And so this committee does have a great opportunity to change that narrative in a very huge way. I see two questions, and actually I was going to come to ask you the question, Gail, because I was coming to you next. because you're actually in an area where we can actually get some of that data and research and understanding. But could you respond to that really quick and then ask your question or comment?
Yes, well, in academia, as you know, we have a plethora of not only students, but professionals in the data management, data analytics. We have a Center of Data Analytics at Bowie State University now. But before I even get more into that, I want to go back a little bit about the curriculum. The curriculum for the contracting officers, and you were saying that it was based on credentials. That's another area that the universities are training the students in. And one of the things that Bowie State University is looking to do is to have student-run Office of Acquisition, because now that there are a number of opportunities for HBCUs, hundreds of millions of dollars. The HBCUs are now engaging more in capturing and responding to these opportunities, but they don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support these contracting activities. So it would be great if we can talk about, in some regard, how we can partner with the current acquisition workforce to help to train the students and to create a pipeline of talent, if you will, that will be ready for the workforce to engage and to learn the curriculum, and also for the workforce to the acquisition, federal government acquisition, to learn more about the different kind of trainings that being executed now in the university. So I think working and partnering with academia in so many ways, in the data research, in the data analytics, in the data storage, but also in curriculum development, and most importantly, training these students to be ready for the acquisition workforce.
And thank you for that, Gail. I mean, you obviously will have the opportunity to create the blueprint for actually a new avenue, a new workforce. And that's something that can be attractive as we talk about contributions and actually the creation of jobs. And so you're exactly right. And we definitely look forward to those contributions in this particular subcommittee. Dr. Mukherjee.
Thank you. I quickly wanted to piggyback on both of those comments from Nicole and from Gail. I think they're very important because on the one hand, there is the academic component, but also there is the train the trainer situations, because sometimes when we, and as an academic myself, I've realized how often I fail miserably when I try to communicate with practitioners, because we have different mindsets, but having practitioners who are trained to train practitioners is very, very important in creating programs and supporting programs through agencies. Federal Highways has their Climate Challenge program that is about to roll out shortly. And I think part of that program, there is an effort at actually training engineers in departments of transportations across the country in sustainability. And I think there might be some great examples there that we can look to and learn from as we move forward. Thank you.
Great point. And also in the comment section, I mean, I see that there's a lot of heads nodding, agreeing with some of the comments here, particularly Kristen agreeing with the academia approach, and research should be the third leg. And even as we went back a little bit further to some of the partnerships that are necessary to be in place, is something it's not new, but it is something that we can definitely take advantage of while making those recommendations. Dr. Schooner, you actually, before I turn it over to David, after I turn over to David, you could just talk about your comments, because I think it's a great ending point for this particular subcommittee. But I just want to get David's perspective, as you have really given advice all over the country, literally, in these particular areas. And so if you could please just add your comments for this area as well, too.
Are you talking about David Malone here?
David Malone, yes, David Malone. Wait a minute, David Malone in Seattle, or David Malone that was in Tampa, or David Malone? Yes, which one?
All right, so I wanted to piggyback on the piggyback from Ms. Bassett's comment. Among the things that I do, one of the things I do is that I'm an instructor for the Institute for Supply Management, and we spend a lot of time talking about a number of subjects. But one that we don't spend as much time on is, frankly, sustainability. And so I think, one, we can do more to change that, but in line with Ms. Bassett's comment, the Institute for Supply Management is coming out with a certification program for students. And it will be sort of, as you see my designation, is CPSM, that is a Certified Professional in Supply Management. This will be a different designation that is for students. And I think two things is important. One, training them early, and as she said, feeding the pipeline, but two, incorporating in our curriculum for them courses on sustainability so that we can demystify what that is. And as they begin their work careers, it becomes a component of what they bring to the party in terms of being able to manage that.
Oh, absolutely. And continue spot on. We'll look forward to consolidating some of those areas around academia and creating those pipeline opportunities as a recommendation. Dr. Schooner, you want to take the last one, please?
Oh, I mean, I could speak on this issue till the cows come home, but as we know, procurement is not about rules, it's all about people. So it doesn't matter what the policies and the legislation and the regulations are, it's implemented on a contract by contract basis. And there's simply not enough information. The number of people that have to progress up the learning curve is enormous, and we have a big challenge. And FAI and, for that matter, DAU are behind. I think one of the lowest pieces of hanging fruit, or the lowest hanging of the fruit, would be just coming up with a comprehensive web page. GSA obviously has background with acquisition.gov, with SAM, with what are often referred to as single government-wide points of entry. But there's some tremendous resources out there at the federal level, at the state level, outside the country. And we've tried through the National Contract Management Association to begin that process. But for example, SIPS, the international organization like NCMA, has done better. NIGP has done better at the state and local level. But there's not a good one-stop shop, accessible, understandable web page. And frankly, some of the models from DAU, I've mentioned to some of you, the contracting cone or the acquisition subway map. These types of accessible tools, I think, could be very, very powerful for a massive, diverse workforce.
Definitely thank you for that, Dr. Schooner. I think that having all of these opportunities are going to give us really something that's new, something that's innovative, and something that actually has been in place, but we're actually, when you have, I think so, I can't remember who said it earlier, but when we actually have the dollars behind to implementing these ideas, we can actually see the change that we've been thinking about for a number of years. And so I'm definitely glad to see a lot of these collaborative ideas come together. Jeff, that is all I have for this segment for our committee on our third area. I'm going to switch it back to you.
Thank you, sir. And just before we move forward, a couple of commissioners, I don't know if had the chance to comment at all during the course of the afternoon. So if anyone who has not had the chance to speak has anything that they would like to say, let's take a moment and allow that opportunity.
Yeah, Jeff, I'd like to add a question or a thought, and maybe you know the answer to this. So I heard us earlier say that we've been seeing a reduction in the number of contractors that are interested in doing business with the government. And I guess, I suppose, as I read and look around and think about this, that I wonder if some of that has to do with sort of perpetual building of bureaucracy over time, with forms and documents and just a lot of paperwork that folks have to do business with the government. Whether that's true or not, I do think there needs to be an examination of the whys behind why folks are becoming disinterested, and really try to offset that in some way. That's the one thing that we didn't talk about. We mentioned the fact that there was a reduction in the industrial base related to doing business with the government, but we didn't talk about the whys. I'd like to know more about that, because I think we need to address it.
David, very fair point, and something I think that we definitely will get into in the industrial committee. Daryl.
Sure. I do a fair amount of work with the National Academy, so I'm familiar with a lot of their cooperative research programs. I'm just curious if there are similar programs in GSA that that's out there that already tackles some of these issues that we could draw from. I don't know if there's a repository of data or research on some of these topics. Anything along those natures currently exists? I'm really just asking the question there.
There's an enormous number of programs within GSA. As we define some of what we're after further, we'll absolutely point to where there are existing tools and programs that we can leverage and run with this. Jenny?
I just wanted to say that I'm really enjoying this conversation, and at EPA, I oversee our EPP program, looking at recommended eco-labels and standards in federal procurement, and really having this conversation, zooming out and seeing how that works with all of the other parts of procurement, including this training part, is just a really good conversation for me to be part of. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, Jeff, at this time, I think if Adam is still with us, we were moving forward to the composition polling.
Okay, and I think that, Troy, is yours.
I think so, with help from Boris. So, and I've come to learn, it's my understanding we don't really need to officially vote on the subcommittees, but what we really need is your polling on which ones you would like to participate in, and Boris and Jeff and Stephanie, if you can clarify, members can serve on more than one subcommittee, correct?
Right. And let me add just another point of clarification. So I believe all of you, if not most of you, did provide your interest as to which subcommittee or subcommittees you're interested in. So we captured that information, but we wanted to take another opportunity, a second poll here, to see after these conversations, maybe you were swayed one way or the other. So perhaps you changed your mind, but we want to capture those ideas as well. And in this link that Adam just put on the chat, if you go back to the Mentimeter that we've been using, these responses are going to show up here. And so we're going to get a sense in terms of both the committees that people are most interested in. And obviously we want to try to balance participation so that we have a fairly even number in each subcommittee. It's one of the targets that's not essential, but we're definitely looking for that. And so we're just going to take a minute here, and actually I'm just going to stop talking and then give you an opportunity to put your ideas. So this is all going to be captured, by the way, and we already have your initial submission. So.
Well, Boris, with so many great committees, it's hard to choose, right? There's three.
That's
so
right.
I'm wondering, like, if we're thinking that all of the committees will work, be meeting every 2 weeks, right? I mean, are we thinking that, you need at least, 5 people or more on each committee? I'm just wondering, I'm just looking at the list right now, right? Where it seems like policy and industry partners are probably going to be pretty full. Workforce seems light right now.
Right, we might look for ideas from those of you who have multiple, that can serve in other committees. We might ask you, will you consider serving in the ones that have fewer people? So the other thing I'll put out there as you're filling this in, we're also going to be seeking both a chair and a co-chair for each subcommittee. I believe we mentioned that earlier today. And then maybe I'll let maybe Troy and Cassius address that a little bit more, but we'll definitely be thinking about that as well. And we can cover that when we do our summary and next step. So we're way ahead of schedule. So things are looking good, but we'll give it a few more seconds here, give you a chance to type up your responses. And if the Mentimeter is not working for you, feel free to drop it in the chat as well. Either way works.
As we were still moving on, Boris, I think Mamie, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm challenged more ways than one today. Forget the eyesight, that's the technology. I've lost camera, but I wanted to say I don't have a clue how to participate in this drill we're going through now.
Okay, well, Mamie, you are welcome.
But I'll send the email.
Yeah, you can send us emails or you can tell us either way, whichever works for you.
Policy and industry, those two.
We got you. We'll note that for you.
Thank you. Sorry
You got
about
it.
that.
That's okay.
And Stephanie, while this is going on, I'm going to give you an opportunity in case I missed anything on this part here, just to make sure that we're capturing everything we need to do.
No, Boris, I don't think we missed it. We haven't missed anything. You're flowing right along.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right.
Now, if you submitted a choice in advance already,
Correct.
So do you do it again or not?
Yeah, if you submit a choice in advance, it's okay. You can do it again. We'll definitely look at both, but we just wanted to see where people were feeling today. So this is kind of a pulse in time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna look at both.
But I'm saying if it's the same, then okay.
If it's the same, then you're good to go.
Okay, all right.
All right, and I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Troy and Cassius as well, to just kind of sort of bring us to a summary and recap.
Well, Sherry, I'll just say a couple words and hand it over to Cassius. I just want to harken back to Administrator Carnahan's remarks about how these committees can be just a great example of civic participation. And I think the last 2 hours of this discussion have really shown that. And again, I'm so excited about what each and every one of you are bringing into this committee and your different areas of expertise and your different places that you sit as far as either where you are in the country or the different level of government you're working with, or whether you're with industry or in academia or with the nonprofit sector or government. Thank you so much. I just think we're going to have so much to work with here. So we have a lot of work to get done. I see a lot of common themes really kind of across the three subcommittees that we've talked about of the importance of getting information out and getting data into the hands of both decision makers within the government and industry. We've talked about the importance of sharing information and expertise really so that everyone can leverage each other's efforts and spread best practices. And I'm really struck that this isn't just a whole area that the federal government is dealing with, but also one that state and local governments are dealing with as well. So important to look at it from the perspective of this being kind of a whole of government effort, both from the federal level, but also in collaboration with different levels of government. And then as Steve Schooner said, it really does all come down to the people that we're asking to carry out all these policies. So incredibly important that as part of this, we focus on the acquisition workforce. So I guess, Cassius, I'll turn to you for some additional thoughts, and then I think you and Boris can help just tee up kind of what's next as far as additional scheduling of meetings and getting back to people on the subcommittee structure.
Okay, and thank you for that, Troy. I won't go into too much detail by name, but I can just tell you between the three committees, we've had everything from addressing centralized procurement opportunities for small businesses to actually understand how to work better with government, academic partners, small business team arrangements, tools to have in place to have centralized places for the agency to identify where these small businesses are located. One person talked about the local government successes that they've had in place and how we can take some of those best practices and use it for this particular subcommittee. And even coming down to data analytics and focusing on some of our institutions of higher learning and as well as our HBCUs and helping to prepare pipeline opportunities for jobs and also training opportunities, certification opportunities, and in some of our best practices. Sustainability is something that we need to focus more on. And as you've heard from the announcement, that is something that is key and at the administrator's top agenda and the associate administrator's agenda to make sure that we are addressing them. So all of these bits of information we're going to have together to talk about these respective subcommittees. We talk about the temperaments of when the subcommittees will meet. And I think someone mentioned, is there a specific number that we need to have in each committee? I think we actually have balance actually across all three by looking at some of the pollings thus far. But I will tell you, if you are interested in serving on more than one committee, obviously, please, by all means, make yourselves accessible if you have the time and the ability to contribute. And so definitely thank you for those bits of piece of information. And we're definitely looking forward to our next steps and making certain that we consolidate the data that we've learned today and start to formalize of having, as what Jeff mentioned, a chair and co-chair of each respective subcommittee. All right.
Okay, thank you, Cassius. So I would like to provide the opportunity to both Jeff and Crystal for some closing remarks. And then after that, I'm going to talk through some administrative and next steps and information for the public as well as the benefit of the committee. So, but I wanted to give Jeff and Crystal the opportunity to share their remarks as we're closing.
Jeff?
Okay. First, I want to thank Troy and Cassius for quickly jumping in and leading us through this process today. Boris and his team for all the work putting this together, and all of our commissioners for the active engagement, for the passion, for the interest. I'd suggest that we achieved everything that we were after with today's meeting. Very strong interest, a number of areas worth deep exploration. Boris was going to go a little deeper into next steps, but over the next few days, what we will want to do is approach a couple of people about being subcommittee chairs and co-chairs, and then getting an initial meeting scheduled, because we want to ensure that we are complying with the FAC rules, that there is adequate public notice. The meeting we want to have initial subcommittee meetings in October, but it will probably be fairly late in the month to allow for that 15-day advance timeframe. I suggest that the subcommittees will also want to have a basic organizing meeting, set up schedule, frequency of meetings, day, time, those types of logistics, which may be in advance of that initial public subcommittee meeting. But thank you to those of you who have volunteered, especially those of you who are willing to go serve on more than one subcommittee. This is a really wonderful and interesting moment. I love the administrator's phrase talking about momentum and money. That really says it all. I open telling you that we have not had a FAC in almost 15 years. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of opportunity, and as you heard, a lot of different challenges out there. So let me just close by saying thank you and turn it over to Crystal.
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to begin by thanking all 28 of the commissioners in advance for your time commitment in the collective of ideas and conversations, the future hours that we'll put in together, also listening to public input. This process is to really to be transparent, to get the input of industry, so that we can be advised at GSA on how best to implement these policies and processes. So thank you in advance for your focus of attention today to these issues and going forward. I'd also like to thank Troy and Cassius for facilitating the discussion today with the members to gather the input today so that we can understand the work streams that we're going to move towards going forward. I'd like to thank my team, Boris, Stephanie, Jeff, and also those who are behind the scenes today to make this day a reality and to build up the advisory committee. We're super excited about what's to come, the recommendations that we'll receive, and we're super excited that we're actually celebrating this on and around the 50th anniversary of the Federal Advisory Committee Act. So thank you all for helping us to make history. We're excited about what's in the future. So thank you again. Back to you, Boris.
Thank you, Crystal, Jeff, Cassius, Troy. We have such a wonderful leadership team. And then again, I would just say echo all the words that have been spoken. Yeah, momentum and money. That's a good combination of words. And Avengers. I'm thinking Avengers too. I think that was great, Cassius. So unforgettable moment. I feel that we've captured quite a bit today. As Jeff said, we've more than met our objective of the day. And having the majority of the members, let me say again, thank you for responding in such short notice. Honestly, for folks in your caliber, it's not easy to coordinate schedules. So this is quite an accomplishment for you all to be here today. I wanted to cover just a couple more details going forward, the things that we need to be thinking about. I want to let certainly members of the public that participated today. At one time, I saw the count of about 140 or so, including our participants here. So we definitely have some folks out there. We are going to be enabling, so we have the inbox, which is gapfac@gsa.gov. You can certainly submit comments via that way. We are going to enable a more sophisticated tool for public engagement in the future through the regulations.gov platform, which happens to be a tool that's managed at GSA as well. So that's coming in the future. I will say to you that for the subcommittee work, just to piggyback on what Jeff started saying, we're going to be looking to do an administrative meeting. Again, this is going to be for the purpose of thinking through logistics and thinking through what each of these subcommittees are going to look like. And then we're going to be scheduling that fairly soon. So be looking out for communications from us. So you're going to see our names, Stephanie, myself, Adam, William, Dave. And so we're planning that meeting. And the objective here is for us to begin meeting as subcommittees before the end of October. So both the three subcommittees. So as Jeff said, we're going to be looking for chairs and co-chairs. If any of you are interested in those, feel free to communicate with me, and I'll certainly collect those ideas from you, and then I'll communicate with Troy and Cassius and Jeff and Stephanie. Definitely would love to see those. I will encourage you, if this is something that you feel led to, we'll definitely be having that discussion. And then I wanted to also say a couple of notes about communications out there, the public communications. We did release a press release. I didn't plan that statement too well, but we just put out a press release from GSA, which is announcing you as members of the committee, and then a few words, and I'm going to drop it here in the chat.
Boris, you're muted.
Oops, somehow I got muted. So I just dropped it in the chat. There is a link there to the press release that we just issued recently, just briefly, not too long ago. And then we also have a website that we stood up, and your names are going to be listed in the website as well. So we are going to be also providing you with a space in Google. So we're going to be working through a couple more administrative things to help us communicate. I don't want to flood your inboxes like I've been doing for months. So I want to be respectful of that. So we're going to set up a space. We use the Google platform at GSA. And so we'll have space for members to work and share documents and whatnot. So that's coming as well. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that we have a great deal of interest from the public. So we're going to look for ways. I want to reiterate a point that Jeff made earlier. In the subcommittee meetings, we definitely want to engage with the public. And so we want to make sure that we make those meetings available in the course of meetings, because this was our inaugural meeting. We didn't have a space where the public could come in, but would normally want that kind of interaction in the future, particularly for subcommittee meetings, so we can hear input from others in other parts of the country here that want to chime in. I'm going to open it up for Stephanie just to make sure that I cover all the key points. Stephanie, would you like to say a couple words?
I think you got everything, Boris. I would just like to say thank you as well. Thank you all for your responsiveness, your time, and your dedication, because we know that this is going to be a heavy lift, but an important one. And so we would just like to say thank you for everything, especially today. This has been a wonderful day for Boris and all of us. So thanks again. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Boris, Stephanie, do you want to talk about the next full committee meeting?
So yes, the next full committee. So we mentioned that we are looking at a meeting 4 times a year. We are looking at December right now, potentially December if we need to slide, but we're going to look perhaps at tentatively we're looking at December 15th. And so we're going to be working with you all to find a date. Going forward, we definitely want to collaborate with you more in finding days. We don't want to say, here's when we're going to meet, but we're looking at around that week, around December 15th. So that's the target for the next committee meeting. For that to be a productive meeting, we want to be able to bring to that meeting reports from the 3 subcommittees that have already done a good job at narrowing down the areas they want to focus on, and maybe already started working towards some perhaps even some low-hanging fruit. So that's what we're looking towards for the next meeting. And Jeff, was there anything else on your mind I haven't mentioned?
And I would just like to add, please consider your holidays. If there's any holidays or anything, please let us know so that we can make sure that, if there is a number of you out, because we would always like to have a quorum, that we can make sure that we work with those schedules.
And Boris and Stephanie, will you let us know if you intend to do it in person or via video again? You don't have to answer now, but.
Yeah, but I can tell you right now, our thinking is virtual. As a committee, we can definitely take up that conversation down the road, and if everyone feels that. But for now, we're thinking our meetings virtual for both committee and subcommittees. Now, subcommittees may have maybe a little more flexibility to do some in-person meetings, but we are considering right now just working towards a virtual mode, which is consistent with what many of the other FACA groups have been doing. So that's the other thing that we're looking at.
Oh, thank you, Boris. Mm-hmm. Yeah, appreciate it.
Sure. And then lastly, I was going to also mention that we are going to post copies of this meeting in our website. And I will make sure I drop, actually, I'm going to drop the copy of our website in the chat box here. So you'll have access to our website. And I will do that right now. There you go. So in the chat box, I just added the link to our website. And so this is where we're going to put the meeting minutes. We're going to draft meeting minutes. And then because of FACA procedures, we're going to review those with the chairs and co-chairs before they get approved, and then they get posted. We have some materials we'll be sharing with you too. You had the FACA briefing this morning, as well as the ethics briefing. So we'll make sure that the presentations that you saw today, you will get that. So you'll get some more emails from us, but again, our goal is to set up our Google space so that we can put documents there, and then you can go and retrieve them. So I think that is about it. Is there anything else that we need to mention, Stephanie or Jeff?
I think you've got it, sir.
All right. Well, I would like to say once more, thanks everybody for being a part of this inaugural meeting. I'm really excited, being a federal employee for a number of years, and this is the most excited I've been in my federal career, I have to say that. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know the rest of you. So we're here for you. Feel free to reach out to Stephanie and myself and our team. And our goal is to do everything we can to set the conditions for success all the way. So with that, I will say this meeting is formally adjourned. We have concluded our inaugural meeting of the GAPFAC. Thanks, everybody.
Avengers.
Yes, GAPFAC Avengers. There we go. Thanks, everybody, and we will be talking soon enough.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Well done.
Bye-bye.